ever worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream, always so generic, more normal than your friends? Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard, 'cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. Tyler, Phil, and Boris. So Canon, it's Canon, it's all. In Canon.
It's Sunday. You know what that means. It's time for a new episode of the It's Canon podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things pop culture, the podcast where we talk about all things geek, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything because it's all in canon. We're your hosts. I'm Boris, and as always, I am joined by Phil.
Good morning, good day. How is everybody doing out there? Including you, Boris. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. A little tired. Been a very long week. We'll get to that in a minute. But things are going really well. So on this episode of the It's Canon podcast, we're going to be talking about the future of cryptocurrency. We're going to be talking and discussing the pressures of working for big tech, especially during the COVID-19 era. We're going to be talking about the Twitch crackdown on harassment, including things that don't happen on their platform. Question. More account leaks. We're going to be talking Godzilla vs. Kong, and then other tidbits of stories as we talk about time and whatnot. Whatever.
That sounds like a full schedule, my friend.
Oh, it's full and then some.
It's like 5 pounds of shit, or 10 pounds of shit stuffed into a 5-pound bag.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. So if we're off, it's because we're recording a little earlier than we normally do on Sundays, because I am taking my mother for her vaccination in a couple hours. So, yeah.
That's awesome. She's going to have 5G soon. Like, just think about it, right? Because my dad's already got half of the 5G.
Yep.
So he's just waiting for the rest.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's a good thing to get the vaccinations done, especially for your parents and for yourselves. Like, hey, it's we want to all get past this, right?
Yep. Exactly.
And right now, it's not good basically anywhere. I don't know whether the world is pulling an ostrich or what, but the news ain't good in our area. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
things are not looking great in certain parts of Ontario, certain parts of Toronto and surrounding areas. The one good thing, I don't know if it's the good thing per se, but I live in a hot zone, so I'll be getting my vaccinations soon enough.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I know that my region is talking about opening up to my age group relatively soon, like this month or, soonish. So I'm hoping I'm able to get in a line to get that thing done, but we'll see what happens.
I'm surprised that you haven't been able to go because of medical reasons and whatnot.
Well, apparently my medical reasons aren't serious enough. So, hey, what can you do? Apparently it's the qualifier is stuff like you have to have like an organ transplant or have suffered cancer, chemotherapy, things like that. And luckily, knock on wood, I haven't had any of those issues. I don't have the best health all the time, but I battle the diabetes a little bit. And, what can you do? You just got to live with it and manage it and wait for your turn when the doctors say that you can line up for it or register on their website or whatever the situation may be.
Yep, exactly. All right, Phil, what a week. We've talked quite a bit here and there, but I've been super busy doing like the whole WrestleMania coverage. I did NXT, did a couple interviews, watch WrestleMania Night 1 yesterday. Gonna watch WrestleMania Night 2. Doing the after parties with Sunday night's main event. So things have been really busy on my end. But in terms of non-wrestling watching, I can't really say I've watched too much. I watched a couple horror movies. Yeah, that's about it.
It's been definitely a quiet week for that kind of stuff for me, because almost, as we talked about last week, almost all the shows that I'm tracking have kind of come to an end. The exception being the Winter Falcon and Winter Soldier. Obviously that keeps on trucking, and Invincible. So those two I definitely watched. But otherwise, I've been spending a lot of time actually getting reacquainted with a theme that we've been talking about a lot lately, and that is Kevin Smith and the View Askew universe. So last night, I actually watched Clerks 2. Again, I haven't watched it in a while, and I'm talking a full watch through with the Donkey Show and everything, because normally I turn it off before the Donkey Show gets there, because all the funniest bits of humor for me hit way before that aspect of the movie. And then I was actually talking to somebody and they mentioned a joke about a Donkey Show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Rosario Dawson was in Clerks 2 and there was a Donkey Show. I almost forgot about it. So I went back and watched that, and then I started watching Chasing Amy, and then yeah, it's been one of those weeks where it's like just the void of Kevin Smith has been enveloping me a little bit. And it's not a bad thing, you know. Sometimes, just like what you inspired me with Chasing Amy, and I'm like, okay, I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. I'm looking at it from, I haven't watched it in a while's perspective. And I gotta say, the story hits me a little differently now.
Yep.
Some scenes that I might have glossed over before have way more importance to me in the dialogue and the actual intention of the scene, versus the shock humor that sometimes it gets as well, because there's many levels to a lot of Kevin Smith stuff, right? Like there's a heart of gold at most of his stories, and there's a lot of stuff around it that keeps you laughing and otherwise distracted towards the actual heart of gold that's in there.
Yep.
And I really appreciate that about his films. I enjoy the banter, but I also sometimes the actual delivery of the story or the hit of it makes me take pause and really appreciate what kind of work was done there. So, yeah, that's my head musings on Kevin Smith.
Yeah. What have you played? And play anything fun this week?
You know what? Despite trying to give up Animal Crossing, I haven't. I picked up that Cozy Grove game on the PS5 or PS4, which is like Animal Crossing, except it's a haunted island. So that's not as good as Animal Crossing, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with that a little bit. It's not the game I thought it would be, but it's not bad. I just have to give it more of a chance.
It is
Avengers,
what it is at that point. Yep. Avengers,
I downloaded the shit out of that game. Now, 70 gigabytes later.
Yep.
And then an update. Like I'm a little bit miffed at Sony that they just don't slip that update in when you download the full game. But it that shocked me at how good the opening was. I actually really enjoyed the stupid little prologue.
Yeah, that was pretty good overall.
Yeah, the graphics were acceptable. Like the graphics were good. I liked collecting the comic books and seeing the Avengers and establishing all of them in their video game form. And I was really, really vibing with that. I was shocked at how well that came off.
Yeah.
And the actual game itself struggles a bit for me. I already see it. There's mechanics that are fighting it and things like that. I don't know. It's a little bit rough around the edges. I still haven't touched Outriders. There's too much bullshit going on around that. online and whatnot, so I haven't really dove into that. And otherwise, it's just been trite gaming. The one update that I did get this week is that this Tuesday, I'm getting delivery of the Dogma signed script and the signed comic book script of Mallrats by
Very nice.
Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes.
Very nice.
So that is a lot of shipping expense. It left California on Friday. So
Wow.
I'm like, it's coming here. They needed the extra time to actually sign it, apparently. So
That's crazy.
yeah, so I'm really excited to add that to my collection. I actually put one of the things up on my Instagram, Palpatine_Phil, where I'm like, I took a picture of the Kevin Smith shelf. And now I've put the Movies Cup on there, the Movies Toronto. So
Yeah, I saw that. Very cool. Very, 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 very cool. There was something I was going to ask you. I just forgot completely what it was going to be. Doesn't matter, I guess.
yeah, Sunday morning. What can you say?
Yeah, Sunday morning. It's a shitty morning outside, too.
Yeah, but yesterday was great. I went for a walk. I'm doing this walking thing a little more. And I'm feeling better.
Yeah, you seem more peppy today. I don't know. It's good.
Well, I just finished my coffee.
Well, that too.
But yeah, it's really I know Boris and I talked off air last week, and he convinced me to just get out there and go for a walk. And so I've been doing that a little more. My exercise is up this week. I'm not being really cutting and going, oh, let's go for a walk, but I'm walking around quite a bit on things that I'm doing and whatnot. So, like yesterday, I went for a dedicated walk again. So it's interesting to see how much the neighborhood has changed for me and whatnot. Because I've grown up here my whole life. So it's freaky because there's places where a house used to be and it's now a vacant lot.
Yep.
And stuff. And I'm like, oh man, where did that house go? It's funny just seeing stuff from an adult perspective because I haven't really walked the beat since I was a kid.
It's funny because my parents live in a neighborhood right in the townhouse complex right beside where we grew up ish. It's hard to say kind of where we grew up just because we moved so much. But where I spent the younger years of my life, I guess is the best way to put it, right? And it's just weird being in this area because I remember when this area, which for people who know Mississauga, it's near Square One-ish. So, this area has changed quite a bit. But it's just similar to you. It's kind of anytime I'm at my parents, it's kind of weird seeing how the area has changed. And some of these houses are now turning into those cookie cutter houses just because someone buys two houses, builds a couple new houses that look exactly the same. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves with people who just buy up properties. It's whatever, they'll buy it up, rebuild, but no thought goes into what they're actually rebuilding.
Yeah, there's a guy across the street from me who did that. He bought a house and he divided it and made two houses that are exactly the same, side by side. And in one sense, I agree with you because it kind of makes the neighborhood look different. But at the same rate, the house that he bought was a piece of shit anyway. So for in a weird way, because it's an older neighborhood, I'm okay with it because it's that's usable land that he made good use of. Yeah. Because the house that was there before just wasn't hitting me well. And the funny thing is that he sold one of the houses for over $1 million.
Wow.
And the thing is that it took forever to sell, and every house sells quickly in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
But this took a long time to sell because on either side of it, aside from his actual unit, the one side has rentals and the other side has rentals houses. And the thing is nothing against renters. I used to be one for a very long time, and that's okay. But let's just put it this way. These houses get regular visits from the police.
Right. That's beside
there's
the
a lot of trouble.
House. That's just shitty people.
Yeah. The landlord doesn't seem to be recruiting the best types
exactly
for that. But what can you do, right? But that's life in the neighborhood.
Yep.
What can I say?
Yeah. I know some interesting people who live up in your area, and I would have to agree with you.
Yep, there's definitely some rough parts in this town.
To say the least. It's kind of weird because it's like such a small town, and it's got that small town vibe, but it's just, I guess it's that small town vibe, right?
Yeah, it's funny because where I work, they said that they moved up here, and we're north of Toronto, Newmarket, Aurora area. And he's just like, yeah, I moved into town and, all this. And then he just kind of mentioned, he goes, I went to this plaza and I really got the skeeves. Like, he's just like, it felt really shady here. And I'm like, yeah, don't go there, especially at night.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, he told me, he's like, my wife and I want to move already. Because there's just parts of this town that are just very unsettling at past dusk.
There are parts, so the mall, for one, there's certain areas in the mall that just seem so shady. And then, right by the hospital up there's like a plaza with an LCBO. It's not that close to the hospital, but I think it's on the same street. Once again, that plaza just looks so shady.
Yeah, there's two plazas in town. That one that's up near the hospital, that's the one that my friend was talking about. And that one is actually the okay one compared to the other one with the Value Village in it. The one with the Value Village is frickin' sketch. I'm telling you, there is shit going on in that plaza.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It scares me. Factory Direct is in there. Oh my gosh. It's just, and a giant tiger. I've never been inside the giant tiger, and I'm holding that as a champion of my lifestyle, where I have not walked into a giant tiger, and nor do I ever want to. No offense to Giant Tiger or its fans, but
yeah,
it's just the where it is in town. I'm like, oh, that looks sketchy.
yeah, I get it. Congrats to your niece.
Yes, my niece is getting married. Her boyfriend, which they've bought a house together. They have a dog, and he finally popped the question, which seems to me to be in reverse order, but hey, you got to live your life. It's tough, right?
Exactly. It's so weird because, like, I've known her since she was a kid. Like, it's crazy to think that she's, engaged now.
Yep, I'm her godfather too.
Yeah.
Like, it's a trip, man. I'm like, oh, she's getting married. She's all grown up. But then I'm like, yeah, she's almost 30.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, that's the thing. Yeah, like, it's crazy. But yeah, like, I've known her, since she was, very young.
Yeah,
Like
you knew her when
legit
she
kid.
was a little girl. Yeah, because I remember being on our forums and somebody made a comment about a picture of her and I went ape shit. I'm like, you don't even talk about my niece.
Yeah. It's kind of funny when people didn't know who we're related to. Because, my brother and I, we live our separate lives, but people don't realize how close we are, or the fact that we even are brothers. So I kind of like when people drop some comments, and the same with him. It's like, you do know he's my brother, right?
Yeah, it is funny because everybody thinks that my brother is my dad when they figure out we have the same last name, and I'm like, no, actually, he's only 10 years older than me. But
yeah.
It's so funny. He hates it. I get a laugh out of it. So,
yep, so funny. All right, let us get into things because we have a lot to cover today. So I think we're going to start with cryptocurrency. So when we were talking about NFTs, one of the conversations that we were having was about kind of the environmental repercussions of NFTs and of blockchains and cryptocurrencies in general. And this has become a major issue. There's positives and negatives. And one of the things that we were saying about cryptocurrencies at the time was that, hopefully because this is a private sector, non-government, non-regulated thing for the most part, they were going to hopefully, strive and strive to make a difference on their own without being forced to. So that's exactly what's happening. So a bunch of private sector people companies, organizations have banded together, and they've announced a crypto climate accord, which aims to erase cryptocurrency's legacy of climate pollution. They target 2040 for the crypto industry to reach net zero emissions.
Oh, that's really noble to enter into an agreement or an accord that has those goals. I just the problem that I see right out of the blocks is most of this stuff is done in countries where it's hard to regulate. Like, it just seems chaotic. And a lot of these places that are doing a lot of atrocious power consumption and have total disregard for things are doing it off the grid, in the sense that they're stealing the electricity in abandoned houses and running like these mining farms and stuff like that. At least that's the impression that I get from when I watch the news and they go, oh, in X country, they raided this block of houses, and in the basements were set up all these video cards that were just cooking. And it was basically causing blackouts and brownouts in the area. And it was all illegally hacked electrical hookups.
But that's the thing. That's the illegally, like the black market of this crypto industry, right? Like any major industry has this black market, and even the crypto industry has this, and that's what that is. But anyone who is on the legit, they would be following these rules. But I do agree that it's hard to kind of maintain this, especially when your government might not necessarily give a shit about any of this. So it'll be interesting to see how they quote unquote enforce. I don't even want to use the word enforce, but kind of validate that all of this is happening. So one of the things that they do want to do, and I think that the technology itself is going to finally be taken a look at it, normalized, and changed a little bit, because one of the things they want to do is they want to develop an open source accounting standard that can be used to consistently measure emissions generated by the crypto industry. So kind of, again, self-validating, self-policing. They also want to develop software that can verify how much renewable energy a blockchain uses. So again, this stuff is being built into the algorithms of cryptocurrency itself. So hopefully that will help. They also want to improve and optimize the code itself, so that as it's solving the mathematical problems, it doesn't use as much electricity as it currently does. Because Bitcoin, do you know how much not electricity, but the carbon footprint of Bitcoin is? You know how bad it is? No clue. Bitcoin alone has roughly the same carbon footprint as Hong Kong.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's crazy. I applaud the people doing this work and trying to make it as ethical and low impact as possible. I think that's great, but it's just a matter of time before governments around the world start putting their fingers into this. And I'm not even talking about the environmental impact, but my ears perk up when I hear there's going to be algorithms and tracking taking place in the background on something. It just means to me that eventually the reason why Bitcoin, or one of the big attractions to it, is that it's a non-traced transfer of cash.
That's
right?
The whole thing.
It's just a matter of time now. Yeah,
that's the whole thing of blockchain. So funny that you say that, because Bitcoin itself, being the biggest player in the game, it's likely to cause the Accord the most trouble because of how much energy it uses. So Bitcoin is purposely inefficient. It does this on purpose. It's something that renewables really can't fix, because the miners who verify transactions to get new coins do so by using energy-guzzling machines to solve increasingly difficult puzzles. So because of how you mine for Bitcoin itself, anything these accords will do won't really help in the grand scheme of things, outside of more proficient problem-solving skills by a machine.
It's just crazy, man. It's interesting to be witnessing this from the sidelines as it's in such early stages and evolving so quickly.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's just a matter of time before governments start dipping their fingers into all this and taking a cut.
And I have that's number one. Number two, I have a feeling that this, once the energy consumption and carbon footprint of certain cryptocurrencies become more known and a bigger issue, I have a feeling that that's when governments are going to start to step in. Like, I'm surprised the European Union isn't all over this, to be honest.
Well, I think it really shows one thing that I've noticed in my lifetime, and that is that government isn't really receptive to change.
Oh, yeah.
They're super slow about things, and you just look at electric cars and how that industry isn't as regulated as it should be. You look at what's happened with big tech in our lifetime and watching Microsoft and all these companies getting hit with antitrust lawsuits and monopolistic behaviors and their slow reaction. You look at what's going on with Facebook right now and the seeming ineptitude of the government to even control or interject intelligently on that. You look at the amount of scams that are going on that seem to be slipping by. Like, I even saw a report last night that the FBI are now investigating cheating in online games.
Yeah.
Because they're basically saying that it's there's games being thrown in Counter-Strike intentionally through people fixing the matches, like larger criminal organizations fixing the matches with players. And the FBI are looking into it, but the FBI are completely overwhelmed because they have no concept of how the game works or anything. You know what I mean?
Look,
like they have no experience in this.
We've seen it when big tech goes to Congress. We've seen the type of questions that get asked. Like, these are the people who are supposed to be in charge of this stuff, and they have no fucking idea how any of this works. So this is why big tech and, especially things like this, like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general can get away with so much, because your governments and the average person has no fucking clue how any of this works.
Yep. It isn't until it goes prime time that you're going to get some kind of legislation or closer examination to truly understand what is happening. And by the time that they understand that, it's going to evolve into something even more off the grid. Like, that's exactly the thing. This stuff is moving at the speed of light, and our politicians are literally just walking with like broken shoes. Like, it's absolutely terrifying in some senses about how inept they are when it comes to adapting to this stuff.
Exactly.
And I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm just trying to point out, right? Like, that the government by nature isn't really agile enough for this type of tech.
Exactly. So that's why, a lot of industry leaders in the cryptocurrency world, kind of like the idea of this, but the reality and the execution is very much into question, because, as we both already talked about, in its very nature, cryptocurrency is the Wild West right now, So, how are you going to regulate the Wild West? Who's going to be the sheriff that comes into town and tries to fix this? So, while on paper this is a great idea, while on paper they hopefully will be able to do something, the reality of actually executing something and executing the plan and making the plan a reality, we'll see. I applaud them that this is finally being thought of, but I just don't know how they're going to actually do anything about this, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there's going to stand to be a lot of people who make a lot of quick money, and they're going to try to make this compliant and whatnot, like you say. But I don't know how they're going to do it. It's noble in its conception, but I think the party, like the fact that everybody talks about this, and it's been going on for a long time now. like a pretty long time in the tech world. I think the party's going to come crashing, especially when you see how it intersects with Twitter and social media. I think like when we talked about the stonks, right, and GameStop and all that, we started to see all these ethical questions about how social media is used to influence certain markets, and I can see that being the same way with crypto. And there's a lot of people, because I follow Elon Musk, because you just got to watch what people are doing. And, you know, he's deleting tweets like crazy lately and things like that, because he's realizing that he may have overstepped his hand, and it's getting eyeballs on it. And those eyeballs become legislators, and those legislators create laws. So.
Didn't Elon Musk this week basically say he wanted to recreate Jurassic Park?
Well, his partner in his little brain venture basically came out and said they could make Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
But that isn't the business that they're in. So we don't understand the context of the statement per se, because this company is about integrating, you know, the human mind to machines.
For the record.
But this guy's like just talking about it, and I'm like, what the hell, man?
For the record, we're talking about his Neuralink project.
Yeah, Neuralink. So basically this is like, the idea is they're doing it with pigs now or something like that, because the pig's physiology and brain waves and whatnot are very similar to human. And they're talking about just being able to download a brain or augment a being with a computer.
Yeah. So
and that's the intent.
Yep.
Yeah, Black Mirror shit, big time. So it's just kind of funny because this whole Jurassic Park thing just came out of left field.
Yeah. Like I saw it and I'm like, Elon's gonna Elon. So here's the thing about that. I read earlier that the Neuralink project showed a demo of a ape or chimpanzee playing video games using its mind. And all that I could think in my head was, fuck, can you imagine if you're playing like Counter-Strike or something like that and finding out that an ape fucking killed you on the other end of this?
Enough when it's an 11-year-old. Yeah, I don't know. This is getting into like one of the areas that I really enjoy in anime, and that is like the Ghost in the Shell conundrums of when beings become digital.
Yep.
Do they still have a soul? What are the definitions? I enjoyed this with Chasing Amy last night, just with the definition of what sex was.
Yes.
And now this is very akin to it in the definition of what actual your essence of being is, right? And I'm like, there's so many different approaches to it and they're not wrong. And this is opening up that huge conundrum for me. Yep. Like I'm fascinated by it, but I'm also quite scared about the frontiers. And like, if you want to talk about us talking about cryptocurrency and it's in its infancy or its juvenile years, this quite literally is the inception of what I think will become a world-changing technology.
Yeah,
100%. It's very uncomfortable.
It's something, what we're seeing now in our adult lives is just like, I'm afraid to get to that point where there's some form of technology that I don't understand.
Yeah, it's beginning to happen to me in some ways. And the funny thing is that I can literally identify exactly that fear because I see it happen to my father all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a weird proximity to witness it from.
It's kind of different because, your dad didn't work in the industry, right? Like, we work in the industry.
Yeah.
We kind of have to stay on top of stuff. But as I see things like NFTs come out and, shit like that, and I'm not even talking about social media. Social media is its own beast. If I don't know or care or understand how or why, or TikTok's a thing, that's one thing. But another thing is understanding at the core how an NFT works and what an NFT is. That scares me. It's like, is there going to be a day where there's some form of technology, blockchain or something, that I don't understand how it works at its most basic level?
But to be honest, like when I look at my father, because the thing is that technology is so prevalent in everything that we do, right? We don't even appreciate the fact that we're our own word processors. We're our own. We interact with technology so much. It's so reliant. And yeah, you're right. In our jobs, we see it because we provide the backbone and have the vision into that. But I see it from a user level all the time because I do support as well. And that's where my comparison about they have to know this, whether or not you're technological employed or not, you're having to do your job with technology. And then when you see stuff exceed people's understanding, that's the lesson that I get out of it. Like it's magic. You know what I mean? Like it's quite literally magic. So magic could be to some user that it's a VPN, but then you start understanding that there's IP tunneling going on, and that some things are coming in over this connection and some things are coming through on the other connection that you set up. And then you get people that understand that, and then it's like, oh, okay, great. Well, now I have an idea of what you're capable of or what your mind knows. And then you get to the parts where everything's magical to them. And it's like, all right, this is interesting. And I don't want to be the guy who thinks that there's magic.
Yeah.
But eventually I'm going to be like, how'd they do that?
Yeah. That's my biggest fear. And it's one of those things where technology and society are so integrated and getting more and more integrated, and talking and thinking about what we were just talking about, where governments are kind of behind in the times. Sometimes tech companies themselves might not be up to snuff with the human aspect of certain things,
the morality of it.
Exactly. And this leads me to our next story. So before I start on this, if you or anyone is considering suicide, or anxious, depressed, upset, and need to talk to someone, there are people who can help. There are crisis text lines, crisis phone lines, national suicide prevention lifelines. In the U.S., there's something called the Trevor Project. There's just so many different ways that you can reach out to someone. And we might add some links into the show notes for this. But this is kind of like a two-part news story discussion that I want to have. Because, as I mentioned so many times, here on the It's Canon podcast, we are not afraid to not talk about something. We want to talk about these things because society and technology are so integrated. I feel that it's important to have these conversations if no one else is willing to. So, for the past, year and a half almost, we've been dealing with COVID-19. We know the issues and we're still learning about COVID-19 from a biological point of view. But the conversation has not really happened in terms of the human aspect of COVID-19. We've seen posts, we've seen people mention it, but no one's ever gone too deep into the long-term effects of COVID-19 on society. So a year in, one thing's become clear. The pandemic has been absolutely terrible for our collective mental health. And a surprising number of tech platforms seem to not have given this too much thought. So this is a two-pronged discussion. Discussion number one is in terms of the employees of these major tech companies. Over the past many weeks, we've been seeing delays. Whether it be in the video game industry or the movie industry, there's been a lot of delays. And the main reason for that is because, we've had to find new ways of actually working in the COVID-19 world. One thing that has to be made very clear, and Phil, you can attest to this as well, is that work never stopped for us in the tech industry. We were literally expected from one Friday, March the 13th. A lot of people went into the office thinking it was just going to be another regular day. Oh, look, there's this pandemic starting. And then on Monday, March the 16th, we were all at home. We were forced to be at home. Literally from one day to the next, our life was turned upside down from this world where we were used to going into an office, and then we were all forced to work from home. So this has added a lot of complexity for a lot of people, whether it be from a, just a workstation, And right now we're just talking about the physicality working from home. So, but work never stopped. It was business as usual for many companies, right?
Yeah. Yep. And you know what? Like the funny thing is that the IT departments like quite literally took it on the chin.
Yep.
Like the champions that they are, it wasn't perfect for every company. There were certainly some expansion points and some accommodation that took a little time to work out. But the fact is that these teams put in countless hours of thankless time, really, and just got a lot of platforms upgraded and compatible with the types of loads. Because most companies plan, like they have a contingency plan to provide continuity of work or whatever. But it's for a percentage usually, because they go, well, if X thing happens, then we can therefore assume we're going to be losing a certain amount of people, or a certain amount of people aren't really necessary for platforms to function. So then they come to some kind of percentage. And the pandemic caused that percentage to be 100%, right? Because everybody was staying from home. There was no office in effect.
Yep.
And that's a lot of stress, man. And congratulations to all the companies around the world that handled that and coped with it. But there definitely is a repercussion to that.
Yep.
And the lack of physical time, no matter what you do, doing a Zoom call or whatnot for work is not as good as being in the office, right? Like I'm thinking, even the way that I work now, I have these regimented times where I'm like, this is focused work time. And I'm thinking, man, when I was in the office, I would go down to the cafeteria and have a coffee. I would, go to the washroom and do this. And now I'm finding that I can literally sit at my desk for like 3 hours and not move. And then when I get up, my legs are shot. Like, it's just like, oh my God, like the blood's pooled. I'm cramping. And it's weird, man. That has an effect on people. And yeah. And
that's
the
what I
tech
mean
to
about
support it.
And that's what I mean about the whole, it was business as usual for a lot of people. And, I've been working at home for now 6 years because my job, I don't have an office to go to. The office is in Montreal. I live in Toronto. I do a lot of traveling. I don't have an office to physically go into. So I've been working from home. So when I started working from home, this was one of the first things I found out was I'm actually working more hours than I normally do because, my computer's always on. So I can always, in the corner of my eye, see my screens. If I see an email at 10 p.m., chances are I might answer it at 10 p.m. There's no real office hours per se anymore. So, this alone from a human aspect has taken a toll on quite a few people. Now, to your point in terms of, the countless hours of IT people, I do want to commend IT people everywhere in the world because they have done a marvelous job of making working situations possible for people. And I see this firsthand because I work with enterprise CCMS solutions. So a lot of my customers have had to adapt to work from home. So I wanted to give credit there. But, the human aspect is hundreds and hundreds of hours. Now we're trying to monitor all this stuff. There's a lot of pressure now for automation. How can we make sure that, stuff is going to be on, 99.9999% uptime, right? The 24/7 stuff. So there's a lot of pressure from a lot of different points and pressure points that we never thought we would ever have to even consider. People had, as you mentioned, contingency plans, but never to this extreme where now we've been outside of the office for about a year, a month, and a few days. It's absolutely insane when you think about what's actually going on and the how hard people have worked. And there's that pressure because there's a worldwide pandemic going on. People felt compelled to work harder, longer, faster, and all of that has taken a toll on many people. So one of the things that I want to talk about was kind of that aspect of it. Everyone's exhausted. There's a collective exhaustion going on. And, this is why outside of the fact that, Cyberpunk 2077 was a failure in terms of its rollout, video games and movies and everything like that, they're just taking their time because, everyone's had to adapt, but it's still business as usual. So that, from a employee standpoint, everyone feels compelled to work just as hard, if not harder right now, because no one thought we would be working in these conditions. So all of this has taken a toll mentally on people.
Yeah, big time. Like, I know that, like, number one, you're deathly afraid at any point in time that you're going to lose your job if you have one during COVID, right? And that alone, the fear is enough to keep you on your tippy toes and working and delivering a little bit maybe outside of what you normally would be. And, I feel bad for people in the restaurant industry and in retail. Like, on top of that, you look at people who have to work at the grocery store and they have to go in and work their asses off and risk themselves to get food to us. And they're not getting paid the money that they should be paid. And they're exhausted because it's got to be exhausting to be in the position of having to manage people. Whereas before, you used to be able to just go and pick up your groceries, check them out, whatever, and get the F out of there. But now they're like, no, you can't put on the belt at this time. No, you have to keep this distance. No, put your bags over there. I can't touch them and stuff like that. That's got to be exhausting for the kid working there. You know what I mean? Or the person working there. It's all of it is really cumulative and you don't really realize it. Like, we were talking before the show and yesterday was the first day off, the weekends here, Saturday, whatever. I stayed up a little late on Friday night. I was, watching Avengers movies and shit like that. But I slept in until almost 4:00 yesterday afternoon. Like, that's not normal. Yeah. I woke up, I had a little bit of food, and then I just went back to bed and laid there, and that's a symptom. Like, that's my body telling me something. That's my mind and my body telling me something. Right? And that's concern, man. That's a real thing that's happening. And I don't think I'm the only one in that boat.
Yep, you're not, because there are some stats to actually back that claim up. So if we take a look at adults showing symptoms of depression, it's nearly doubled from March to June of last year to 19%. In the U.S., 11% of adults reported feeling depressed between January and June 2019. By December 2020, that number had quadrupled to 42%.
Yeah, I'm not shocked. I really am not shocked.
Yep.
Like, one thing that I can say to people, because I was getting some help during all this before I came on the show, and for people, just don't be afraid to reach out if you need some help. There are resources, and I think the population, the government, and everybody are starting to realize how important the mental health stuff is. And there are things that are out there, but it can make a big difference. You need to find hobbies. That's Boris and I say it on the show all the time, that even if there is nobody listening, we'd still be doing it because it's our own ability to have geek therapy, per se. So we get the chance to interact with one another and talk about the things that we want to talk about. And that's made a big difference for me. I'm still not immune to it, and I know that you're not. But, you got to find some things that give you a little bit of happiness in life and that make you a little more social.
Exactly. Now, we're lucky enough to have this this platform where we can talk about stuff. We don't really talk about how we're feeling per se, and that's because the tech industry, and this is the second part of the discussion, the tech industry is a little behind. Depending on what platform you're using on, they may or may not even allow you to talk about this stuff. So if someone uploads a video about them feeling unwell mentally, about them wanting to hurt themselves mentally, that video could easily be taken down. And this is kind of where a lot of people are calling for the tech industry to change the rules, because all of this is important information. All of this is good to see from people, because oftentimes, that cry for help, it's not necessarily about a cry for help, but it's the reality of the situation, right? A lot of people are claiming that the tech industry is just trying to keep everything happy-go-lucky, blocking us and shielding us from the real world, the realities of stuff, because they don't know how to deal with stuff. Because tech companies, from a legal point of view, don't want to deal with the cleanup.
Yeah, they don't want the liability, right? And that's why, and it's automated as well, right? So you see things like YouTube and whatnot that will give you your monetization check mark and whatnot. But even beyond that, all right, let's just say you publish a video. It's not a monetized thing. You don't want it to be a monetized thing. You just want to have an honest discussion about something going on. They bury it in the algorithm. And, even if they don't kill it, it just gets buried. It just never gets to the eyeballs, right? And that's the big issue for me, is either a full takedown by a Facebook or a Twitter and a censorship, unjustifiably so, or a burying so it never gets any attention that it might deserve, right?
Yep.
It's not unless something goes extremely viral. So you have to have a hook baked into it.
Yep.
In order for it to get the eyes.
So there is a public call now for some of these companies, especially some of the new social media platforms, to have a policy on self-harm and conversations about suicide and what's actually happening out there. Because the reality is if you can't moderate, if you don't even have a policy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I think it's even, more sinister than that. I think it's algorithms gone freaking crazy. It used to be, when you look at the analog days of digital life, if I could coin a phrase, you used to have a whole bunch of people making decisions, right? Like, let's say you ran a message board, which we have a lot of personal history with. You have a message board, and then you have a whole bunch of moderators, and then you have a discussion behind the scenes about the ethics of a situation. So you could quarantine posts or whatever and have an actual discussion with other moderators and people and gain points of view and opinions and reinsert that, or admonish somebody for doing something that they shouldn't have in that thread, being insensitive to somebody or whatever. But now it's I just don't believe that there's people at the end of a lot of this stuff. I think that there's people creating stuff, but I don't think it's monitored by people anymore. I don't think that there's a collective decision being made. I think that there's a program decision being made. And I think that the danger is that these tech companies treat people exactly like they tell us they're going to. We're products. Yeah. We're not people. We're products. And the product needs to be controlled and quarantined by them. And they're just going through and doing that because it's in the terms of service.
Yep.
And that's the real criminality about all this morally, right? And my goodness, if people thought that we were on the negative loop before, holy cow, hold on to your hats, people.
Yep. Having said that, there are companies who are starting to address the larger issues between tech and society. For example, Twitch will ban streamers for serious off-platform conduct and harassment. I know what some of you are going to say. It doesn't matter what XYZ does on their own time. Well, it does when they are a famous Twitch streamer, because people correlate person XYZ and Twitch as being one entity. So person XYZ is representing Twitch, especially when they have the credentials and, the certification from Twitch. So, if person XYZ, is being accused of sexual misconduct, that reflects poorly on Twitch. So they have now given clear outlines for how it will handle off-platform harassment and serious misconduct. In a blog post, the company categorized off-platform harassment into two sections: harassment that occurs on Twitch and other platforms, and harassment that takes place entirely off-platform, aka IRL.
Yeah, it's Gina Carano meets Twitch.
Yep.
unfortunately, like we had this fleshed out discussion with that, and when you enter into an arrangement with a company like Twitch or anyone else, right? If you're reflecting upon their image in a way that they don't want, they're gonna have rules about what they're gonna do, or they're gonna terminate. They're just gonna say, "Hey, look, we don't want this association anymore. Have a great life. We hope it all works out for you, but don't log into your channel because it's gone." Right? Like, tough, man. It is, well, it's not tough. Don't be an asshole. And you're not going to have a problem. But at the same rate, I worry personally about, I'm not as worried about the harassment or any of the other, heavy stuff. That seems logical to me. It just, when you start splitting hairs, when you start getting into, well, what the definitions of those things are, because that they're just going to narrow and narrow and narrow for a company, right? Yep. They're going to start off really broad and well intended, and who knows where it goes. I hope that it keeps an even keel. But.
Yep. So, a lot of this stuff was, this isn't new to Twitch. If you remember, the Super Smash Brothers streamer Zero was banned because he admitted, keyword, admitted, he sent sexually explicit messages to minors.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a number of those scandals too, right? Like, I think that there was, Inside Gaming had a little bit of a scandal with some of its content creators. Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't dig too deep into it. I saw reports that there was some accusation of improper behavior by some, and yeah, it happens in the industry, right? It's not wrong for them to terminate on that basis, right? If there's misconduct going on and people are abusing and using their social media status to, I don't know, take advantage or harass people, it's not cool.
Yep. All right, so that's that.
Last week, Boris, stop sending me the pictures that you send me. All right,
Last week we were talking about Facebook and their leak. Well, they're not the only company who has leaked. LinkedIn has apparently had 500 million accounts that have leaked online. Clubhouse, the new social network that's podcast-like, has lost personal info for 1.3 million users.
Jeez. I saw the other day, last night on YouTube, I logged in and I follow Linus Tech Tips, and he was doing like a live broadcast, and his phone number has been released to the public through one of these leaks.
Yep.
And he was griping about it last night. I didn't watch it. I just saw the headline. I thought, oh my dear Lord, like I wonder if that was in the Facebook. But now I can just wonder if it's in the LinkedIn, or wonder if it's in the Clubhouse, or wonder if it's... That is... Wow.
Here's the thing. The Clubhouse one was interesting because their database was just a simple SQL SQL database.
Oh. The one that least surprised me when you said it was Clubhouse, because I'm like, that's so new. They probably have no freaking clue what they're doing on the back end. Like, I'm sure they think they do, but I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that, that database isn't secured. It isn't, you know what I mean? It isn't done to the standards that maybe others do. And by me even saying that, the others seem to do a pretty shit job as well. So,
yeah. Isn't that crazy?
This is terrifying. Terrifying.
Right?
Like, social media, like, I seriously debated completely deleting my Facebook this week. And I'm probably going to do it. I don't log into it at all anymore.
Yep.
But the issue is that it's exactly this. That my information is sitting there. But I have absolutely no comfort level in the thought that if I go through all the steps to delete myself from Facebook, that I'd actually be deleted. You know what I mean? Now I could completely see them making an even less honest attempt to protect my data that they already have.
So I'm not 100% sure, and I can't confirm this, but I would assume the way that Facebook does your deletion is it's just a active versus not active status of your profile and information, because I know that people who have deleted Facebook have been able to come back and everything is still magically there. So I think it's simply just a binary on-off, active, deactive, or not active thing in their database, and that is that. So when you delete yourself, your information isn't being removed from their database.
Well, here's the big thing, right? This is the part that put me down this path, is that there's Facebook profiles for people who have never been on Facebook.
Yeah.
When they do the request for data and all these investigations, they have information on people that have never signed up for the platform, but they know their email address, they know their proximity to family, they know possibly their cell phone number, they know all of this personal data information. It's already had its profile footprint somewhere in their database. And that's the terrifying part, right? Yep. It's like, what's their commitment towards protecting that? Whether or not you're active or deactive or inactive, like what's the exactly? I'm like, does that have less encryption around it, and then that's easier to scrape up from a hacking point of view? Like it's just absolutely mind blowing. And you know, this goes back to the bigger point about the morality of these tech companies. Whether it be about your mental health or whatever, it's also about, you know, their obligation to people, to treat people like people and not like products. But none of these companies are engineered in such a way that they can differentiate, because a corporation is classified as a person.
Yep.
You know,
exactly.
And you watch that corporation movie and the new corporation, and they go through and do a psychoanalysis on corporations to see what kind of people they are, and they're full-on psychopaths at this point.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we've dug really deep into tech and society this week, so let's have a little bit of fun. Let's talk about Godzilla versus Kong.
Kaiju!
Well, all right, so last week we were talking about this movie, but the figures weren't out. They were literally released as I posted the episode. So the movie made $48.5 million in the U.S. over its 5-day opening weekend period, and another $76.1 million from international markets. In total, the monster mashup reached about $285.4 million worldwide.
That's a good bit of business for a pandemic, I gotta say.
Right?
Like, geez, man, that's a lot of moist and dank theaters getting the bucks, and a lot of people throwing down the $25 to rent it. Like, jeez.
That's only box office numbers.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That's only box office numbers. So, in addition to crushing it at the box office, Godzilla vs. King Kong made an impact on HBO Max. The film debuted on the streaming service day, so on March 31st, and Warner Brothers confirmed that it broke records for the platform. It was viewed more in its first 4 days than any other film or show since HBO Max released in May of 2020.
Well, part of that is, and no offense to the Snyder Cut and its fan base, but a comic book is baked into a comic book audience by and large. Now that audience is growing, and that's why you see a lot of comic book movies and shows. But Kong versus Godzilla is such an old property and such a bigger property as far as people who would be interested in possibly checking it out. Because you could have, conceivably to me, I think that there's a big crossover in the fan base. But you could have a lot of people, in my opinion, that are just like, I really dig monster movies, or I want to see this for the spectacle that it is, because I grew up hearing about King Kong and Godzilla. And I'm just going to say this. Like, I watched Alana Pierce last night talking about this movie, and I got to agree with her that there's no way that King Kong should have even stood a chance.
Oh, yeah. That's beside the point.
Like, axe or not, man, I'm telling you, lizards that could shoot radioactive fucking lightning. Just giant lizards that can shoot radioactive lightning. Like, I'm like, come on, a lizard is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like Kong, man, I'm telling you, he was just a big ape.
It was a fun movie. I liked it.
It was a great movie. I enjoyed it so much. But, you know, even people at work are like, oh, man, I'm going to watch Kong versus Zilla with my kids tonight and stuff like that. And I just hear a lot of buzz around it, whereas they weren't talking about, oh, I really want to sit down for Snyder Cut.
That's because a lot of people were embarrassed to say they're going to watch it.
Yeah, but like we said, it's actually a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not a bad. You know, I don't want my 4 hours back. I gladly give it to them.
Yep.
You know, but yeah, I just find that there's a spectacle around Kong versus Godzilla. Like, there's people, you know, that want to shake the floorboards in the house with the home stereo, or enjoy it is a perfect mindless type of movie for a big screen. Like, if we were in a case where, let's say this pandemic is over. Tomorrow is finger snap. Pandemic's over. Guess what? Right? Yeah, I know.
I find that finger snap now has a completely different meaning in my head.
The minute I said it, I kind of regretted it. But it gets the point across. Tomorrow, something magical happens. And we can all of a sudden go back to the theater and have no concerns whatsoever about contracting coronavirus or anything else. And what movie are you most likely going to see? Probably Kong versus Godzilla, because that looks like a goddamn lot of fun to sit in the theater and watch it, and, you know, all the noise and the spectacle of it.
Yeah.
So I think that movie's got a lot hanging on it, and I think that it got shopped around, and I don't know that even Warner Brothers understood the nature of that property.
You want to know my hot take? Here's my hot take, Phil. Take a drink before I tell you this.
Okay.
I believe that Godzilla vs. Kong is a better movie for the theaters than Tenet was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I that's not shocking to me at all. I was thinking that. Like, I was thinking when you announced the number that it made, I was thinking how probably Christopher Nolan was crying little crocodile tears.
Yep.
In his beer, going, "Oh, the pandemic means I can't make movies the way I want to," and blah 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 blah.
How about you make?
And then this happens. It's like, I'm a complete failure.
Well, have you?
I made a dog pile shit movie.
Tenet was horrible. The fact that we know someone who, like, in the middle of the pandemic, risked it to watch Tenet, man, I'd be pissed.
But in his defense, he didn't know what Tenet was like before he went. He actually thought it was a good movie, right? Like, that's one of the complaints that people make all the time about movies, is that the trailers sell the movies so well, and they can completely misrepresent. Yeah,
as they should.
They can. It's an industry. It's its own thing, making trailers, right? But they can missell. It's just like a video game or whatever. You go, oh man, I'm so hyped for this game. You get the game and it's a piece of crap, right? And then you're just like, oh man, I want my money back. There ain't no getting your money back with a movie. I think I've gotten a refund on a movie once.
Well,
where somebody like threw a freak out in the movie theater, and the manager just said, "Here's free passes, like, to everybody in the theater. You guys, you know, we screwed up your movie experience."
You can pretty much pray that something goes wrong with the movie, reel or something.
Yeah,
that's the only way you're getting money back.
Yeah, and that's the dark underbelly of the movie industry, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why people, like we identified last week, but That's why people enjoy getting movies off the internet, because there's no skin in the game, so to speak.
Yep. Speaking of movies, Top Gun was delayed to November. Mission Impossible delayed till May of 2022. Deathloop, that movie, or that game, the video game Deathloop, was supposed to come out in May. It's now coming out September. Nintendo Switch stock is deathly low, and they're not making any right now because of the semiconductor shortage.
Computer chips, ladies and gentlemen. Like apparently that's why Apple has to keep on moving this event.
Yeah.
Where they want to talk about the new MacBooks and iPads. They have no chips.
Want to hear something about the no chip thing? So I know someone who works at the Ford plant in Oakville, the big famous Ford plant in Oakville. And they were saying that right now they're literally still building cars as if it's no one's business, but they're all going straight to the parking lots because they can't finish them.
Yep. There's no computer parts to put in them.
Now,
that's
are they tracking what these cars are missing? Because I'm sensing in a year or two, we're going to get massive recalls because of this. Because these companies aren't stopping lines. They're still making what they're supposed to make, but they're not finishing them.
Yeah, it's going to be a logistical nightmare for them on that side, I would assume. But it is getting real, people. We talked about it on this show, and Google had to make an announcement the other day because the rumors were so rampant that they were going to cancel the 5A phone, the Pixel 5A phone, because there was no chips. Google had to make an announcement that they have chips. Like, they're going ahead with that product and the product line, because the 4A was such a hit. It made the Pixel division, like, it made their year type thing. So now there's no way that they can retreat on that product front. But obviously, this is hitting in those areas that we predicted or that we saw the trend going towards. And it's happening. It's affecting, like, Apple are saying that their iPhone production hasn't been impacted yet. But there's a possibility there that it may, because it's impacting other stuff, right? So these are all huge repercussions when Ford is parking vehicles because they can't even start because there's no computer in it.
Yep.
You have to wonder, man.
You have to wonder. There's a lot of stuff going on. The last thing here, it's nothing major, but Sony movies are going to Netflix exclusively after the buy period, which is typically 18 months. So the buy period includes home release, so it's the theatrical streaming release, and then you have the home release. So anytime you can buy a copy of a movie, usually lasts about 12 to 18 months. It'll be going to Netflix after that. So any Sony movie. So what's interesting is that this includes movies like Venom 2, Morbius, those Marvel movies. So, clearly Netflix did this strategically, for a shot across the bow of Disney Plus.
Well, you have to look at where Netflix is positioned, right? Exactly that. When you look at the competing streaming services, obviously Warner Brothers is redirecting everything towards HBO Max. And Peacock is going to be taking a lot of their content and putting it exclusively on their service to promote it. And obviously Disney is doing that too. Sony and Paramount are the two, kind of people, like two kind of big industries out there that don't really have a home.
Paramount,
Universal
just
maybe
launched
too.
Paramount Plus. So CBS All Access was changed to Paramount Plus. So that includes everything under the Viacom umbrella.
Right. So it really makes sense from that point of view. Sony used to have Crackle. I think they still do, but obviously that service suffers from it being like Sony.
It being Crackle?
Yeah, it being Crackle. So I get it. I'm like, I see that that's a smart play. And it is funny because I have tracked that release schedules throughout my entire, especially the past few years, where I'm like, okay, movie comes out in theater. All right, buzz dies down. Movie comes out on home video, is really expensive for a buy. gets cheaper, and then it becomes a rental, and then it goes to the services like the movies on the go and stuff like that. It gets its air cycle on that, and then it will show up on Netflix, right? Or a streaming service. So, yeah, it's a great play.
Yep.
Shrewd bit of business, but
right now, Sony has a contract with Stars with a Z. Stars with a Z. So that contract ends this year. So Netflix was able to get those rights. So interesting developments here in the streaming world. But yeah, that is your week in pop culture, your week in tech, your week in all things geek. But before we go, there's a couple things we need to do. Number one, you are going to get a special episode on Wednesday where we talk all things Falcon and Winter Soldier. And holy shit, do we have a conversation planned for you?
Yeah, I would recommend you go out and watch that bad boy, because we're definitely going to have opinions that are spoiler in nature.
Exactly. And last but not least, nothing ends a episode like us telling you where you can send all your hate mail to.
Oh, the hate mail. You can send love too. Be a lover, not a hater. But yeah, you can track us down on www.itcanonpodcast.com. You can look us up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You know, all of our data is unsecured, so at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com, and you can subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. Anywhere you find podcasts, you're going to find the It's Canon Podcast. And if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a rate and review if possible on your platform. Thanks so much for taking the time, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Yep. So also on the channel, we have a interview. Matt, my NXT Talk partner, and we did a interview with the creators and writers of the comic book Invasion from Planet WrestleTopia. Really fun chat. So thanks to them for coming on a show and having a conversation. It was a lot of fun. So you can find that on the It's Canon podcast feed. And yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday talking about all things Falcon and Winter Soldier. We're the It's Canon podcast. He's Phil. I'm Boris. Good night.